Now it's recording.
It's not sharing.
And not sharing.
Yeah, okay.
How many things can go wrong?
Okay. Okay, so the presentation would be will have a wider scope than the previous ones when you already have the background about land administration, and will be about the 3D spatial development lifecycle of the objects. And yeah, to be more specific, yeah, I added here an image to show the complexity of a building block in 3D land administration, which also has other perspectives than pure land administration. So you can also see, like, we have underground rights, we have water rights, we have infrastructure in tunnels like metros and trains. We do have some zones from the spatial planning domain, for example, in which areas you can build, which are the development rights. And for the permitting part also, where it is allowed to go above a specific height, mixed zones. So I just wanted to show that apart from the traditional land administration registration process, we do have many things that need to be considered, and this can be very well depicted in this figure. So the presentation would also relate to some of those aspects and to a more life cycle approach. So that is why we call it spatial development life cycle. And yeah, I would like to start with a vision that how this can be accomplished. So we do have, as you already know, many sources of data. We do have data from acquisition techniques. So surveyors go outside and measure. Maybe it's not only from surveyors, maybe it's from the public. You have many data that come from your Wi-Fi on the phone. You have data from sensors. You have data from Twitter or Facebook. You can collect all those type of data. We have data from design. So we have as-built data or as-designed data, mainly for buildings and other infrastructures. And we also have database data, the cadastral data, the data related to rights, restrictions, and responsibilities, other data about planning, spatial urban planning, valuation and taxation, but also land use. If we want to see the big idea, we can say that we would like somehow to organize and prepare those data in a way that can be reused in other phases. So we use land administration as the core of this modular system. And we have a database based on ISO 19152, the LADM that you have already heard at the previous lecture about it. And the second edition of this standard, you will see it also at the next slide, is wider. So different types of data would be registered there based on LADM. And this also includes spatial planning, marine data, and valuation data. So in order to have this core and trying to collect all those data and organize them, we can draw some preliminary boundaries and or zones. Some boundaries can depict rights. Other boundaries can depict restrictions. For example, you are not allowed to fly a drone under this area, or you're not allowed to build upper this area. Those should be validated, manipulated, approved by relevant authorities, because, for example, you cannot have a building in any kind of format. Let's say, for example, in BIM format, IFC format, the building information model. And if a room is a room that depicts an apartment changes shape, you cannot directly change the legal space, so the volume of this room, because the legal part is associated with the property rights. You cannot change so simple a property right because something is being changed in the physical world. And I think this distinction has already been made from your assignment that you have to compare the legal data with the cadastral map and the physical data, that you found some differences there. And then following this process, we would like to disseminate and visualize this data, and there are different ways to do so. in 2D and 3D systems, either desktop-based or in the web or through services. This is an option of how all those parts can be put into a system architecture, for example, to depict the 3D spatial development lifecycle. So I choose to present some data sources here, again, from different domains. So BIM designs, 3D city models, data dictionaries, databases for land administration, other kind of databases and registers, zoning plus cadastral maps, etc., sensor data, environmental data, etc. Those should be accordingly stored, organized, and manipulated. And of course, this is not solved, and this is not something that already exists today. But that's why we say that this is the vision, and then we can have multiple online solutions. So to go back to LADM, I will not focus that much on it, but I wanted to show the progress that has been made, that the previous version has been adopted from many countries worldwide, and there are many solutions being supported from the industry. You can see here both 2D and 3D prototypes that have been developed. And as I said before, from a single part, that was the first edition, now we go to a multi-part edition, so we have different modules, and all those are directly related to this life cycle approach, which can be easier seen here. So what we do have, for example, we go outside and we survey a building. The order, just to mention that the order per country or per jurisdiction, it may differentiate. But what I wanted to highlight here is that this is a cycle. It's not a linear process. So when you go outside and you survey something, you handle and submit some data. Those data can be therefore registered, for example, in a land administration system, should be maintained and updated. Then they can be used for valuation purposes or for zoning, etc. Today, this process, all those processes in those domains are isolated. Each one follows a specific methodology, using their own standards or no standards at all. They use specific formats and encodings to store and exchange data. And of course, what I think is very important, and we will see it at the next slide, is that all those domains have different requirements. Maybe the stakeholders or the involved parties can appear in more than one of those phases. However, the requirements each time are different. So about the stakeholders, for example, in this building or in any kind of building, I try to depict here the various stakeholders that can, or they usually appear. We do have the real estate agencies, we do have the owners, all of them, we have the engineers, both the architects, the surveyors, and other engineers, structural, mechanical engineering, etc. You have the banks. We have sometimes, if for example, we talk for a big investment, you may have also cost consultants. You have the notaries, of course, for the land administration authorities. You also have the contractors, and you also have the policy level, so governmental or municipalities, which are all involved more directly or less to the process of building, designing, permitting, buying, selling, evaluating a building or any kind of object, and all those exchange data. What I would like to say is that this data exchange can be standardized in terms of having also, first of all, in mind the land administration part. And for example, we can use specific requirements and report all of them in some formats. This is not one-to-one relationship, neither one-to-many. It's many-to-many relationships. So it's a tricky puzzle. So I think what we have to do first is to identify all the user groups. We do have various user groups that now that we put them in this cyclical approach, we make them to become now data producers. So they're not only data users, they used to be, some of them used to be also data producers, and those are the designers usually, but they're also data producers. And then we have to identify the needs of each one. and go to a more life cycle thinking approach to share and reuse information for all those different domains. This is just from the literature, an example about how much money this costs, for example, and how much time you earn when you reuse information, and you reduce also the errors when you share 3D data from existing projects and infrastructure. Now, again, at the physical and the legal side, and because we talk about standards, we do have the legal aspects that can be very well modeled through the LADM model. This is the first version, but then the rest to come. For the physical part, we do have many options. We have building information model and IFC. This refers to building level. We do have CityGML that refers to city level or neighborhood level. Then we have some encodings, which are, let's say, more web-friendly and can store information for both levels. We do have OGC Land Infra standard that provides a framework to model both infrastructure and building divisions, etc. So, and there is much more to come, right? There are devoted standards for underground and others for marine spaces. So this list is very big. And in order to go to this cyclical approach, we have to find a way to make interoperability works between the legal and the physical aspect, to link this physical space with the responding legal without losing information and being able to reuse it. At the presentation, we will focus on the BIM, so the building information model, because the last years has really gained ground. We will see at the next slide why. In order to promote mostly the collaboration between the various phases of the spatial development lifecycle. However, whatever standard, let's say, or encoding we would like to use, and we pick IFC for that, we need to set the requirements, how this standard or approach should be structured in order to be efficiently reused for land administration purposes and other purposes, to organize information, and also to have in mind the various processes that need to be followed. So because I didn't know the status and what you know about BIM, I just wanted to say that BIM is a 3D digital approach starting from managing complex buildings, but now it's gaining ground also to other infrastructure objects. It aims to provide the framework to exchange information and also share them between the various partners that are being involved. And the last years, it has been a mandate from various governments around the world, which means that we're going to have more and more files based on IFC, and we should see how we can take advantage of them. Yeah, and some statistics to see that it is gaining ground and which countries are really adopting BIM. For example, you can see that the USA was one of the first, but it really started from Scandinavian countries. And it is also an ISO standard, multi-part again edition. Yeah, I just found this picture and I thought it's really, really nice to see all the different types of information that you are able to store there about various functions, and to really think, and this is just for like open question and discussion, to think how we can take advantage of all this information, because we talk about a model who is very rich in information, how we can reuse this kind of information for other purposes. And yeah, there are various projects that are being ongoing now, or have already been completed about BIM in European level. And of course, there are many regulations from the European Commission highlighting the importance of utilizing this standard. And also funding is given for this standard. So why I put all those things here is because I think that we will really have a huge amount of BIM data available the coming years, and we should take advantage of them to enrich them with different sources of data, land related or maybe taxation related, in order to use them for other purposes. Yeah, and I will give some examples of works that have already been done also here at TU Delft. For example, we do have this super complex building in Amsterdam, and everything is modeled in IFC. So what is the purpose of reusing such information? We can say, for example, that this is an IFC space, which means that this is a unique space. For example, this room can be an IFC space and is owned by Eftychia, for example. If we model properly the various IFC spaces in a whole building, and you can say that, for example, I have 100% property right here, but I also have 50% share here, and there are also common spaces there. By organizing this information, we can query the model and say, give me all the spaces that Eftychia owns, for example. And then for very complex and multi-story buildings, we can see that we can easily access this kind of information. Same also goes for other type of objects, not only the buildings, for example, infrastructure objects or tunnels. Yeah, and there is a short demo about the building permits, for example, how we can utilize data from BIM IFC for building permits. I will quickly show it. No? Can you see it? No? Sorry.
Stop sharing.
Yeah.
Screen.
It's on the top, okay. Maybe no? Yeah. This is from a project in Estonia. We can see, first of all, that those are integrated in a 3D city model, for example. We see the surrounding buildings in other level of details because BIM contains much information, so it is very rich in detail, also very heavy to transfer it. So here, some regulations have been modeled, as you can see here with green, sorry. And yeah, there have been developed several functionalities of how we can check if the building exceeds several checks. For example, if it is built above a specific height, or if, for example, there are no stairs where you should have stairs for evacuation plans, etc. Or yeah, the minimal door width. And this goes very much into detail, but I just wanted to show that this is one kind of information that you can reuse from a single model that can also be reused for land administration purposes or other purposes. I don't want to spend all the time here, so I will close it. And I would like also to show something more appropriate, let's say, for this course, because it's about a BIM legal prototype.
Yeah.
Doesn't want to work like that. And everything is borrowed from a company. I will explain at the end. So the collaboration also between the various stakeholders in order to achieve a cadastral registration called BIM Legal. Where we can select specific, as we said before, specific spaces, who owns what. We can also see and the floor plan in 2D, because everybody is used to see 2D plans and also make 2D plans, or at least export 2D plans to submit. They are located also. Another application for using again such models is for indoor navigation or evacuation plan at the indoor environment. I think this would be also one of the next lectures about the evaluation and taxation visualization prototype. So we can enrich the model that we have with other type of information, for example, the tax value, and query then according to some criteria, as you did in the assignment in 2D, but here we talk about 3D data. Yeah, and I hope I'm very short in time.
I think you did not use too much time here. And indeed, Abdullah Alatas will give a short presentation next week, Wednesday, about indoor navigation using rights. Where are you allowed to go? And yeah, illustrated with our own building here. Questions for Eftychia? Here or online?
Interesting.
Yeah, what I wanted also to show with this presentation is that you can go very far from the traditional registration. You always start from there, and this is the core component. But if we are able to reuse information in the various phases, you really, first of all, you really avoid many errors, because if I exchange a model with you, whatever kind of this model is, and then another version is being produced and I send the other version to another partner, you always have duplicates, you have data loss. And yeah, I think this is an everyday life for people who work in this chain. And of course, the one who is doing the permits works with, maybe today, with paper-based, for example, drawings, PDFs, or even with AutoCAD drawings. And the other one, the architect today may be using 3D, and you cannot have the same accuracy also in all those processes. So yeah, I didn't want to focus that much on BIM. Apparently, I think I did, but I think it's a good example of how this type of information, because it is semantically rich and you're allowed to add the information you would like to have, so to connect database with what you have, and should be maintained, it can be proven a very good source for many applications. And one of those applications is land administration.
Other questions or remarks?
I have a question about it, Estonia. By the way, thank you for updating. I'm impressed. What's going on, so I feel a bit behind for a few years with my 50 minutes today. But about Estonia, I'm wondering that the check can be noticed the building regulations. Is there also a check against the land use plan in their system?
I'm not sure, but there is another link that I can send it here, because my computer will crash, and just show it if we have like 5 minutes. Close my, no, I can show it from here. I will share that screen. Let's see. I'm not sure.
Okay, this one's not sharing anymore now, so you should be able to share it your own.
I'm not sure, so we'll have to see. Just keeping various. And there are also the various versions. So depending when the project is, because for example, in permitting, you have to check different things in the various project phases.
But it sounds so easy, yeah? All these stakeholders that are all working about the same world we live in. But say for decades or centuries, they were doing their own business, like people from the cadastre measuring parcels, from the municipality giving permits, architects making nice buildings. And now in the information age, we want to do it better and more efficient. And their standards are very important. But okay, what standards? Because every domain has its own standard.
Yeah.
And therefore, I think what Eftychia did was focusing on IFC and trying to connect that to the land administration.
Yeah. So I can see here what they did was to translate the various regulations that they use to check, for example, if there are windows everywhere or such things. So I'm not sure if land use is here.
The zoning plans.
The zoning plans were from Agum. No?
Those Agum PSD.
Yeah, you work
we
together.
focus very much on the land use plan project, and now I see this.
Yeah, I think those are complementary. I think those are at another like zooming level. For example, here, if there is a ramp and the ramp should be inclined for this percentage. The good thing with BIM is that you can calculate everything. So for example, for the cost, you can, if you have modeled it correctly, and this is what architects do, you can calculate everything with one button. Let's say, okay, it's not that easy, but it's easier. So it's a lot of information.
Rule by rule by rule by rule. Checked.
The funny thing is that in the Netherlands, consider to be also two different silos. There's building regulation as such. I think the experts are here at Delft, while zoning is another field.
Yeah.
They don't communicate. So I was wondering about this.
Yeah. Here it's about for safety and route evacuation, etc. So I'm not sure. Yeah. I'm not sure if yeah, of course.
Okay. Any other last questions or remarks? Then thanks, Eftychia, for giving this special guest lecture.
Thank you.
And thank you for showing your intermediate results of the project. Looking forward to the final report. And then I will compare the answers. Probably what you have been doing now, you cannot fail. But I let you know where things could have been done different or better. So, and for next 4 weeks, I try to get a real room because we are disturbing each other, they and us. And I thought we had a GEO lab for this course, this time block of 2 hours, but apparently doesn't work. So hopefully we get a real wall, a real room.